Thank you for tuning in to the SeaBros Fishing Podcast. On this episode, we had the pleasure of sitting down with a longtime friend and charter fishing legend, Captain Tom Depersia. Tom has been an avid fisherman, hunter, and outdoorsman his entire life. Our family has actually had the pleasure of knowing and fishing with Tom and the rest of the Depersias for several decades now. My uncle, my father, they both mated for Tom, helped run some of his charter boats. Taylor and I did the same. We mated for Tom. We mated for Tom's son, Jeff, as well. So we have a long history with Tom. He's a great guy. Almost all of Tom's children and grandchildren are mates or captains on charter boats and commercial boats throughout our area. He has owned and operated Big Fish Charters in Green Harbor, Mass. for over 40 years now. And in his career, he has landed thousands of bluefin tuna. Tom has served on the board of the Stellwagen Charter Boat Association and has represented charter boats in various regulatory initiatives for bluefin tuna and other species in our waters. In this conversation, we catch up on life with Tom. We discuss charter fishing, fishing together as families, his winters in Florida now, tell a bunch of stories, had a bunch of laughs. Tom tells tales from the early days of handlining giants back in the 70s and 80s. And then we progress on to the development of trolling squid bars and what we're experiencing in our fishery today. Tom's been in the game a long time. He's always a pleasure to talk to. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he and his family have taught us a lot over the years. Without further ado, please welcome to the podcast, Captain Tom Depersia. Welcome to the SeaBros Fishing Podcast, where we follow 3 words of wisdom. You can't catch them if you don't have a hook in the water. Always trust your instincts. And the last, you'll just have to keep listening. Stay tight.
Am I coming off or what? Get that down. Don't get on that rock.
You know, I was thinking on the way over here, of like all the things we could talk about. And like we could do 20 podcasts on your life.
We really could.
Like just the history of so many different things between ground fishing, haddock,
Tuna fishing.
The tuna.
You've seen the tuna fishing since like the beginning of it, basically. The beginning of the commercial fishery, which is insane.
Yeah. Oh, it was insane, yeah. Unbelievable. When I first started fishing, I had a management job. I was a corporate purchasing manager for U.S. Envelope Company in Springfield, and so I used to charter a boat. I wanted to, I did real good striped bass fishing in Connecticut, and so I wanted to catch giants. So I chartered boats. I looked at a map and saw that Provincetown was the closest to Stellwagen Bank. So I went there, chartered some boats out of there. Bobby Woods was the guy I chartered. And did you ever hear of Johnny Woods? No,
I haven't. No.
Okay, so that was his son that I got to be good friends with out of Provincetown. So we used to fish. So when I went there, we chartered, and I thought we were going to go to Stellwagen, but basically we trolled. At first, we trolled the daisy chains with mackerel.
Yeah.
Okay, or squid. They used squid and made up rigs. But you'd troll around all day long and say, "Jesus, what's going on here?" And nothing. And then you start to get like 5 o'clock at night, in the afternoon, late afternoon. And it was amazing. I mean, you didn't make any difference what direction you were going in. There were pods of fish. There were up on the surface, sickles all over the surface. Everywhere you looked. Okay, there'd be 20 in front of you. So, 30 behind you. And it was like, oh my God, we're going to go off any second here. And this goes on for hours until finally the big flow up and you're on and you catch the fish. And we caught several that way, chartering this guy.
Yep.
And And then I said, well, I want to catch a fish on my own. But then I got information about Stellwagen and said, I'm going to get a fish in a small boat. There was no small boats out there at the time. It was all big boats. Mm-hmm. And I had a 23 Mako. I put a fighting chair up in the bow. And the only other center console was a guy out of New Hampshire, and all big boats. And sure enough, we went out there and started catching giants out of the small boat. So I fished small boats for several years with my Mako, and then I got a 23 Seacraft and did great. And then more and more small boats would start coming out there, once that happened.
So was that pre-Mooney fleet? So were you doing the small boat thing before that started?
I mean, the Moonies, I can't remember exactly when they showed up, but they actually, a lot of the commercial guys hated the Moonies.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody in my harbor, they all hated them, but the Moonies did a big thing for the tuna fishery. All right. The first few fish that we sold, we got 25 cents, 50 cents a pound. Mm-hmm. All right. That's what the American buyers were giving us for the fish. Mm-hmm. Okay. And they had Japanese guys there too. I mean, they had Japanese technicians there all the time. But
what year was that approximately?
Jesus.
You think?
I started with the big boat, with the big fish. Big Fish 2, I got in 69. So
wow.
I started fishing before that, like 62, 63 with my smaller boats. And then bought the Big Fish 2 new.
Yeah.
And that was 69. But I can't remember exactly when the Moonies showed up. But what happened was we were getting crap money for the fish. Okay, nothing. And finally the Moonies, Reverend Moon, came out one day and said, we're going to buy fish from you fishermen out there. They were on the radio, okay? Mm-hmm. We're going to buy fish, and we're starting at $3 a pound this year. Now, this was like nobody ever got $3 a pound, okay?
Yeah.
So this was a big thing. And so, we go back to our buyers that are screwing us at 25 cents a pound or 50 cents a pound. And they said, "Oh, the Moonies are just trying to get your business, and then they're going to give you less than I'm giving you, And we said, "Screw that." So people started selling to the Moonies. And the Moonies said, we're going to start at $3, and as the price gets better, we're going to give you more money. And it didn't take long before guys were getting $10 a pound, $9 a pound, okay? And it
big
changed
money back then.
Yeah, and it changed everything, okay? And that was just the beginning of what happened. I mean, the prices went crazy. I mean, at one point, every fish that came into Green Harbor would get $20 a pound. And no checking for, did you burn the fish or whatever condition.
Didn't matter.
And all the fish were huge.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking 700 to 1,100 pounds, okay? I mean, at that time, I haven't got one in a long time, but I got 12 fish over 1,000 pounds.
Jesus.
All right?
Oh, my God.
In my life, okay?
That's unbelievable.
I don't know anybody that's going to ever do that again. And I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of other guys that caught as many or more 1,000-pounders as I did.
Yeah.
But the fish were monsters, okay? I mean, every single one was 800-900 pounds. Way before Wicked Tuna. Mm-hmm. I mean, I did a show. I see your hat pen reels. I was like your top field advisor. And so they called me and said, listen, we want to set you up with a TV show called Ron Reel. And And they picked a date, and we picked a date, and they came up and fished with us. They gave me 4 brand new outfits, complete, rod, reels, everything. And so we went out and caught a fish, and it wasn't anything spectacular, but it was 968 pounds. So that's that was nothing spectacular at the time.
That's unreal.
I mean, now, you look at the fish today, and I'd say the average is 300 to 600 maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, that's like, some are smaller and some are 700, but most of them, I think, fall in that category. Right?
Agreed.
And, my best fish was, I got $38 a pound. $21,000 for one fish. And I had fish that I got $19 a pound, $20 a pound, $17 a pound. I get a check for 3 fish and it was $45,000. It was like, slap me. Is this for real or what? I can't believe it.
Unreal.
This is back when money was a lot more valuable than it is today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And wasn't uncommon normally for a good season. If you had a good season, and that's not a lot of fish either, might be 15 fish, you're talking $200,000 for the year.
Yeah. That's a boat.
Nobody makes that kind of money anymore in this game. You know what I mean?
Even chartering and being able to sell fish, you're not even doing.
You
close
can't do it. Yeah, I know. So it's crazy. I just keep dreaming about the old days, saying, "Oh, I wish we were back there again." God.
We'll go back. Obviously, we want to hear way more about you basically like starting when the fishery started. But do you think it's back? Like just from our perspective in the last 10 years, like 2010, call it 13 years, 2010 to now.
Yeah.
It seems like the amount of fish around now is something that I've never seen before in my life.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of fish. Yeah, there's a lot of fish around now.
Yeah.
I don't think it's anywhere near what it was before. And like I said, they were all big fish. But,
So there was way more before and they were bigger?
Way more before and they were bigger, way bigger.
Wow.
Like I said, the average fish. Now, here's a little, I got a call. Well, I used to advertise a lot with the New England, with the Fisherman magazine.
Yep.
And so every Sunday night, they would call me for a report. And I'd talk to Tim Coleman, who was the editor at the time in New England Fisherman. And so I'd be saying, we did good on the bass and blues, and cod fishing was excellent, and we got 4 giants this week. And he said, Jesus, he said, I've been out with 20 charter boats trying to get a 16 millimeter movie of catching a giant, and I'm yet to get one, And I says, you want to get a movie? Meet me at my boat at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. And we'll take you out. And so sure enough, he showed up and we went out. And it wasn't, I don't even think I had the 3rd line in the water. We went off and caught the fish and brought it in, and they weighed it. And I'm there. I've never caught a fish this small, 550 pounds. And that was the smallest fish I had ever caught up to that point. Now, There was no school fish at the time.
Yeah.
Okay, none, 0. Nobody ever caught a school fish. It was all big fish, and that was the smallest fish. And this is, I don't know, 20 years after I started or so, maybe not that many. But that was the smallest fish. I couldn't believe how small it is. And now today, at 550 pounders,
a good one.
It's a nice fish,
Yeah.
So things have changed a lot in terms of size and there's a lot of fish. There's a lot more fishermen now.
The pressure's insane.
Yeah. The pressure's there. I shouldn't. I don't know if I could say that 100% because before, with the big money that they were paying, you'd go to Stellwagen Bank and fish the southwest corner, and there'd be 300 boats there. Wherever the bite
300 boats on
300
corner.
boats. today everybody complains, "Oh, you're getting kind of close to me." The guy's 50 yards away, and we were side by side. You could throw a sinker into the guy's boat next to you. I mean, Putt McLean and I used to be side by side sometimes, and maybe the boats were as far as the two walls right here.
That's crazy.
Okay? And I mean, you knew if the guy next to you was your friend.
Yeah.
You knew he was going to, pull his lines in or cut his lines if he was screwing you up.
Yeah.
And you didn't care, but you had to squeeze a little, squeeze into a spot.
What was the forage, the bait like then? Like how did the actual, the bait and the tactics for catching them, what did that look like back then in the 70s?
Well, number one, we were chumming. Okay, everybody chummed. All right, and it's before the dogfish got stupid. What happened was everybody chummed up until the point where Sonia Fornham, she was in charge of that. She was in a conservation group for shark protection. Mm-hmm. And she got the New England Fisheries Management Council to slow down the quota on dogfish, which basically stopped the whole dog fishing industry because all the infrastructure, the buyers and all that couldn't make any money at it. The guys had quotas, ridiculously low quotas, so they can't make any money on it. So nobody was fishing them. And so the dogfish population went crazy, and now the minute you throw chum in the water, you got 1,000 dogfish under you. So it basically stopped chumming at the time. But at the time, we were all chumming. And, real early when I started fishing, most of the guys were fishing hand lines. Mm-hmm. Okay? Hand lines.
That still boggles.
Yeah, thinking the power, power of these fish. And
you were using basically rope.
Yep.
With cable like you do.
Stranded
heavy
cable.
Stranded cable. With what they call a Japanese hook. It was a circle hook.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's what everybody fished with at the beginning. I was one of the first ones fishing rod and reel. Other than the big sport boats, the expensive ones. But all the commercial guys used hand lines at the time. But eventually, I think it was Andy Glenn around our area was the first one, commercial guy, to switch over to rod and reel and start catching a lot of fish. And then everybody started
making the transition
to rod and reels, and now nobody hand lines.
Yeah.
But when everybody started fishing, the fish got shyer and shyer. So we were basically, most of the people would use dead bait. Okay, dead bait. Now, one of the things that I found a big advantage was mouse traps. Okay, and basically what we did is we'd take a herring, cut him in half, and hone out the tail part of it. Okay, hone it out, and you'd make a wire leader. This is to prevent being chafed off.
Yeah.
Okay?
We've actually made a couple of them.
Yeah,
way back.
You'd make an 18-inch with braided wire, like 350-pound test braided wire.
Yeah.
I'd use a 10-aught mustad hook and a swivel, and you'd fold the wire up and then put elastics around it and dental tape to hold it together enough until you were able to set the hook on the fish. And then once the pressure started, it would break free, and now you'd have 18 inches of wire.
Yeah.
So you would
rake in the teeth.
You could basically, you can horse the fish it. We were catching these big fish sometimes in 20 minutes, a half hour.
Yeah.
Because you could put all the pressure on, We're using 200-pound Dacron, doubled. I was using it doubled up at the last 30 feet. So once you got in close, between the wire and
It's like anchor line.
That's insane.
You're not going to lose a fish.
So did you have any mono? You obviously had mono above that? Or were you going straight Dacron to the wire?
Straight to Dacron. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was like
the fish were just eating Dacron.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was great. No, excuse me. I think we were using some.
A little bit
we were
mono.
using mono. We were using
one little.
Now that I think about it, we were using
Andy,
mono.
probably.
We weren't using Andy. I think I was using Andy 120-pound gray at the time.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And but that was the most effective. Now I also had another rig that I used because there's more and more dogfish started showing up, and I had a rig that going back a little, I one day I was fishing and I hooked into a Mooney's line, and so I brought it up, and it was straight wire, okay, Maline wire with a hook on the end with a piece of dogfish belly on it, the white part. And so I got the idea of, this is a good idea because the dogfish, like if you're fishing there and all of a sudden it's getting around a tide change and all of a sudden the dogfish show up, and I mean, sometimes you wouldn't even notice that they ate your bait off.
Yeah.
And so that was a problem. So I made up a rig with straight wire and a mustad hook on the end, and I'd cut the belly meat out in a long strip, but like a triangular strip. Put that on the end to hide the hook, and then I would take the dogfish and cut zucchini pieces out of it, okay, and then sew them on the wire like 6 inches apart, 9 inches, maybe 9 inches. Put 3 of these zucchini pieces on there. All right, because you got people throwing chum in the water.
Yeah, looks like a chum trail going down.
So the tuna are going through, eating this and eating that, and all of a sudden, look, there's a big piece with 4 chunks right there. You know how big their mouth is. They just go over and suck that thing down. And I was doing great on that rig.
That's sweet.
And plus, it's all wire, so you can straight wire. So you bring the fish. You don't have to worry about, getting a gut hook or whatever on the thing.
Yeah.
And that worked great. But that's how
unreal.
That's how the difference from today. You use wire, you're never going to get a bite today. I mean, these fish are so shy.
Yeah.
That and once fluorocarbon showed up, that there were a few guys using fluorocarbon. I know up in Gloucester, the Depersia brothers up there were phenomenal. I mean, it's like they couldn't miss. Every single day they'd go out, and they would hook up every single day. They'd go out there, with their big boat, and they'd have a skiff with them too, and the whole fleet would be there. Nobody's catching a thing, and all of a sudden, bang, bang, both of those guys got, both of those boats are hooked up. They get their fish, and they take off, and everybody says, what the hell are we doing?
Yeah, wow.
It's crazy. That was when fluorocarbon first showed up, and nobody knew about it, and then eventually the word started to get out.
Weren't the Delphs in on that fluorocarbon thing early too? I think.
Yeah, they got into it too. Yeah, the Delphs were great. I mean, I was lucky. I had at one time the Delphs were up, and I happened to be. I was at the town pier in Marshfield, and Ralph Delph, the father, came up to me and says, "Hey Tom, do you know anywhere I could? I just bought a trailer, so to stay, and do you know any campgrounds around here I can bring the trailer to?" And I says, "Yeah, I mean, there's a couple in Plymouth and whatnot, but why do you want to go there? You come to my house. I got 2.5 acres. Park in my backyard, okay? And I'll set up hoses. You can wash your boat down every day and park your boat up top and whatnot."
Cool. I didn't know that. That's
cool. And so he said, "You sure that's okay?" I said, "Yeah, I would love to have you. Come on." And so he had his son Robbie too with his boat, and so the both of them came, and they didn't even have to take the gear off the boat. They just wash it all down, and there was nobody's going to bother. It's away from the road. Nobody could see it back there. You know, there was no neighbors back there or anything. So that's what they did. They stayed there and every night would have dinner together. So
no way.
I picked up some of their, their techniques and whatnot.
Yeah.
They were phenomenal fishermen.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I mean, they are live bait fishermen. They don't troll at all. Okay, even down in the Keys, that's all they do is live bait fish.
Yeah.
So they were good at it. They had their own sabiki rigs that worked great, and they could read the water good. I mean, Ralph was a super fisherman, and so were Robbie was just one of the best fishermen around.
Yeah.
So they fished with us, but they had some great techniques. They were catching the giants when they first came up there on stand-up gear, which was unheard of at the time.
Which is weird because I feel like it went away for a while and now it's back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like how long ago was that? They were catching fish on stand-up gear. 30 years ago?
Probably the 90s, I would say, right? They came up. Yeah.
30 years ago. They were
late 80s.
But they were the only ones doing that. I mean, at the time, they were the only ones doing stand-up. They had their own harnesses that they kind of made up, and that's the way they fought their fish. They'd get a hook up and fought them. And it's kind of funny because years later, well, they didn't show up for quite a few years because the fishing went down and the prices weren't there, and the prices started falling. And then Billy Delph, there was Ralph the father, and then Bill and Robbie and Mike. So one year Bill came up and with his 39-foot yellowfin, I think at the time, that was all the Delphs were Bass Pro staff, so they all got free boats, 39-foot center consoles, okay? So he came up, Bill came up, and that's when there was a lot of big schoolies around, and this is what, I didn't see this personally, but he was there and supposedly caught like a 200-pound fish on 10-pound test 10-pound test spinning gear. All right.
Jesus Christ.
These guys were crazy. And just to give you an example of how they are, when I started going to Florida, all right, Ralph called me and invited me to fish with him down in the Keys. All right. And so I went down, and he had one other guy on the boat, a charter, and he said, "We're going to the dry Tortugas." Okay. So we went out, caught some bait, and then shot. It's a pretty long run from Key West. So we ran in his contender at the time, I guess, and started fishing for red snapper. All right. Now, Ralph was, he was trying to break world records all the time, and so we got there, and I'm not used to fishing with spinning gear because when we're fishing cod, it's all conventional gear and whatnot. Yeah. So here he's giving me this spinning rod with 8-pound test line on it, okay, to catch 20 to 25-pound red snappers, okay, all right, and I'm there. Why don't you use heavier line? No, this is what we're fishing with. And I mean, I talk about a workout. You'd put that down, and I mean, it didn't. Once you got close to the bottom, you were on. Okay, we were using pilchers, and the back of my neck at the end of the day was so. I'm not used to fighting a fish, and with that, and if you put too much pressure, bang, you break off.
Yeah,
and you got to read the fish, and and he's trying to tell me how to do this. And eventually, I mean, I ended up catching like 3 of them. out of 30 bites. Okay.
Sounds like me shad fishing. Sounds like Brian.
But I mean, that's the kind of guys they are. They push it to the limit. They want to catch big fish on light tackle.
Yeah.
Okay. And we caught fish. I mean, we caught all of the fish we needed. And but once again, he wants to break records, and he did. He broke a lot of records.
I think you learn a lot from fighting fish on light gear too. You learn a lot about line angle and hook placement, and how much pressure you can put on, and it all translates.
Terminal connections,
everything.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
It's funny this year when I was in Marathon in the Keys, I ran into another guy from Marshfield, and he said, "Hey, I was in the tackle store down the road," because I had told him about Ralph Delf, and the whole Delf family. And he said, "I was in the tackle store and I saw a book, and it said the Master Angler, this Ralph Delf story." Okay, and so anyhow, before I could get there, several days later, he was heading back to here. Okay. Jamie Carpenter is the guy, okay?
Yep.
You know Jamie?
I know Jamie.
Yeah, and so he, all of a sudden, he said, "Hey, Tom, I got something for you." He came over to my condo that I was staying at in Florida, and he gave me the book. So I've got the book at home if you ever want to see
cool.
it, you know?
Yeah, I would like to see that.
But, I mean, here there's a book just, inches thick, all about Ralph.
Wow.
And all the fishing. And he not only fished here, but he fished in Montana. He had a beautiful log cabin up on a mountain in Montana, up on a mountain. Beautiful place. And he trout fished in all the rivers there and whatnot,
That's really cool.
So, and I mean, he's broken all kinds of records through the years. He was a great fisherman, a great friend. The whole family's been a great friend. We've fished with Robbie a couple times. My family has gone down there and fished with him.
That's awesome.
So he was.
Speaking of your family, so who is the first of your kids to get into it with you?
Well, it was Jeff and Debbie.
Yep.
Okay, because they were the oldest. Debbie's licensed. Mm-hmm. She's a licensed captain, and she's taken charters out of my boat. Mm-hmm. On the Big Fish 3 many times.
Yeah.
And in the Big Fish 2, if I had more than one. I mean, at the time back when they were young, I had 3 boats. I had, Big Fish 3, Big Fish 2, and a center console, a Seacraft, a 23 Seacraft.
Yeah,
and,
remember that boat thing was sick.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and we, and so if I had 2 charters, either Debbie or Jeff would take the charters.
Yep.
And or I would take one and Debbie would take another one, or Jeff would take them. Jeff ran my boat basically ran the Big Fish 3 from when he got his license on his 18th birthday, and fished my boat until he was 30, and then said, to Dad, retire. And I don't want to retire.
You have the best job in the world.
So he says, "The hell with you." And he went and bought his own boat. Okay,
Yeah.
So which is good.
Yeah, he's doing well too.
Yeah, he does great. So and Kevin, my son Kevin, my youngest son, my youngest son, he's got his license also, and
Maritimer.
And he did the same as you two guys.
Yeah.
Went to Mass Maritime Academy and got a marine engineer degree. So that was great. And he's done good. And he's a fishing fanatic like the rest of us. He's been tuna fucked, and he got the bite, and now
I'm surprised he's still working.
He worked for you for a little bit, building bars. Remember back at the old house?
Yeah,
he's really young.
Yeah,
that's how I met you guys.
I know,
when you were making the bars.
I know.
Yeah,
I was just thinking how many. This is a great segue actually. How many squid bars that I've rebuilt and built for you? It's got to be over 500.
Oh yeah, it was a lot of them.
Like you drop off thousands of squid sometimes.
Yeah.
And it was just like build as many bars as you can.
Yeah.
You know, and then you and Ronnie pretty much taught me how to build bars.
The colors really came from him. Our starting colors came from Ronnie and you, and then we started tweaking things.
Stuff.
Yeah.
But like I remember to this day the piece of paper that you gave me when I was like 12 of how you want the bar built. I wish I kept it because it was like a sketch of each squid with the spacing, the dimensions and everything, how long you want the leader. And the big thing that you actually gave me was, giving that short but long enough header on the front of the bar. I remember like that was the key thing because other guys were making the crimp just above the squid, or they're making their leaders like 10 feet long above the bar, but you wanted it just long enough so that the bar couldn't get tangled in your main line. Like that was your key.
Yeah.
And then that's how I ended up starting to build my bars. And it was definitely the best way. You want to be able to get the fish up so you could stick them without having to leader the bar pretty much.
Exactly.
And just everything. I mean, weighting the hook baits, and pretty much no one else weighted the hook baits that I know of at that time. Mm. And just like the evolution of the squids. Yeah. I mean, I was making mold craft. Some of them were mold crafts.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you what happened there. All right.
I'd love to know, like,
interfere with you.
I know like some of the history, but I'd love to know like how the squid bars really progressed. Because like we have a ton of guys listening that canyon fish.
Yeah.
And I don't think they realize like that it didn't start there.
Yeah.
It started up here. It started for the giant bluefin, and everything just got smaller and smaller and smaller. Now they're selling bars with 3-inch squids.
Yeah, little hatch baits.
Which never existed.
Yeah.
So like, can you talk about like how you started trolling?
Yeah.
And then like what you saw progression wise?
Well, back when I was going to Provincetown and chartering the top guys there. Yeah. All right. To learn the whole game. All right. And primarily with Bobby Woods. Okay. At first, when I went up there, we'd be using real squid, all right, and making daisy chains.
You're just flossing them on, pretty much.
Just flossing them on, Yeah. And eventually, he came up with using the wire across, okay, the wire to make spreader rigs out of it, all right. So when I was there, he was showing me how it sets them all up, and we started catching fish on it. And he was like the only one doing it at the time. So all the other boats would go out, and we'd be the first ones to hook up all the time on that bar. Okay.
So how were you? Walk us through like how you guys were building them. Like, were you catching baits the day before or days before?
No, what I did was, I had a real job at the time.
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't chartering or anything. I was fishing out of my small boats.
Yeah.
And eventually had the bigger boat. Now, when I started chartering, okay, and we'd use real baits. When I started fishing there with the squid in the Mako, there was a fish market right in Provincetown, on one of the docks, right where all the boats were lined up, okay? And so I lived in Connecticut at the time, and I would call that sometime that week to the fish market, and I'd say, hey, can you save me? Because they had big squids there. Mm-hmm. And I'd say, hey, can you save me some squid? I'll be there Friday night after work. I'll come up there. And so I would drive from Connecticut all the way to Provincetown.
Oh my God!
Trailer in my boat, okay, and get these squid, and then all night long we'd be making up these daisy chains and whatnot out of the live squid. Now I don't have to tell you, trolling a live squid, they after a while they break apart, and they don't last forever all day. So you needed to have several other squid to fill in the holes, and then so they didn't always last forever. So at one time, Well, a lot of the charter boats. I at the time I belonged to the Cape Cod Charter Boat Association, and so we would go have our meetings in Sandwich, and so some of the guys from Provincetown would be there and whatnot. So I met up with several other the guys there. Most of the guys were buying their tackle from a guy in Worcester, Dick's Tackle in Worcester. So, which was convenient for me because I'm coming from Connecticut on the Mass Turnpike. I would just get off at the Worcester exit and go to Dick's Tackle, and I would buy, volume of tackle that I needed for my charter business. So while I was in there one day, all of a sudden I saw this squirt squid, okay, which it wasn't a shell like the ones we're using now. It was solid. It was Moldcraft solid rubber squid, and it had a hook in it with a wire leader and a sinker inside. Okay, and so I said, "Can you get those without all that crap in it? Just the squid itself?" And he said, "How much do you want?" I said, "Why don't you?" I said, "I want to make up some rigs on that." I thought he looked great instead of having to get live squid. Yeah. So I ordered a gross of them, 144 squid. Mm-hmm. Okay. So he had to order it from Moldcraft, and so before I got there, I drove up from Connecticut, and before I got there, one of the guys in P-Town had stopped to buy tackle, and they saw the big box of squid there. And they're, "Holy shit, where did you get these?" And he says, "Tom Depersia just ordered them, He's got a gross of them." And he said, and I think it was Charlie Mayo. I'm not sure. It's one of the
It's funny, I've talked to Bill. Is it Bill? Bill's probably Charlie's son, is my guess. But anyways, I've talked to Bill Mayo several times at trade shows, and he was talking about when the squids kind of started, and it's funny you just mentioned his name because I didn't bring him up at all.
Yeah,
so he was saying he was kind of like the beginning part of that.
Yeah, so what happened was he took half of my squid. Okay, all right. No, he took half of the gross. Okay, and on his way back to Provincetown, he stopped in what's the big harbor down there inside Cape? It's slipping my mind right now. But anyhow, he stopped. It'll come to me eventually. He stopped and showed them to some of the guys down there. And I think one of the guys, I trying to remember his name, I think it was Bob Morton. Do you remember they were? No. Okay. He gave some to this other guy, Bob Morton or whatever, and he's the guy that eventually started making squid bars and selling them.
Interesting.
Okay. He before that he was a fish buyer. I used to do a lot of business with him, selling them fish. So, anyhow, so what happened was this guy, I'm pretty sure his name was Bob Morton, made up the rigs with this Moldcraft and started selling them to everybody. All right. I made up my own rigs.
So I don't want to interrupt, but I'm going.
Yeah.
So before this, was there anybody that you know of that made an artificial like squid tuna lure? I mean, I know those 7-strand Green Machine.
Yeah.
But like, was there anybody taking these hollow body kind of squids and
Nope. Nobody was.
So the squid that you saw in the shop, what was it made for? Was it made for tuna? The one that you said that was rigged that you didn't want?
No. It wasn't made. Well, I'm not sure if it was made for tuna. I mean, it had wire.
Yeah, maybe it was like halibut or something. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It was just something that people would troll behind a boat, you know? I mean, because it was just a single squid with a hook in it.
Yeah.
All right? Nobody made any rigs out of it, and I'm not sure if anybody ever even thought of using it for tuna.
Yeah.
But, well, like I say, once these guys got their hands on it, and I mean, the guys in P-Town were used to buying real squid, and what a pain in the neck that was.
Yeah.
You know, spending all day putting them all together, and then they don't last very long. Here you got a rig that's going to last, and so we started catching fish with them, and then people were getting the ideas of using something lighter that stayed on the surface easier, you know, and so that's when the shell came along.
That was hollow baits, right?
But nobody was manufacturing. And this Bob Morton eventually stopped selling them. So when you started, I don't know if anybody else was in competition with you.
Well, Ronnie was making them.
Yeah.
And I know there was a couple other guys, I think, to the south making them. And then I honestly wasn't even like selling them. I was just building yours.
Yeah.
As like a side, like a, you know, kid learning to make fishing lures.
Sure.
And then started basically talking to Ronnie about making like custom colors. And then that's when it kind of like took off. And I just told Ronnie, I said, I'll buy X amount of, you know, squid of each color and just don't sell them to anybody else. And
yeah,
at that time there was only one guy making the squids, and on the East Coast anyways. There was
Ocean Lure and Moldcraft were like really good too,
and
then overseas squids and all
right,
that.
and then Seven Strand was, you know, making the Green Machine, and then I don't know when they started making the shell squids, but then, you know, next thing you know, there's 3 or 4 people importing them, and then there's 3 or 4 people in the States making them. But yeah, that's crazy. So were you taking natural baits using them as hook baits with the squids, or were you just going all rubber?
All imitation.
Yeah, and it was only one color too, right?
Huh?
Wasn't it only like one color available back
you mean
then?
In the Moldcraft?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't it like brown,
it was just
right?
that brown color. Yeah. And eventually, I mean, all the stuff I was getting from you, and those work way better because they were lighter.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know, at first we were using all wire. Okay. All wire down the middle. And
right.
So, and then, I think even Bob Morton was using wire, and so eventually it switched to mono. I mean, it's shyer, much shyer.
Yeah.
And it took off, and they were fantastic. And you know, I can't remember what year it was, but all of a sudden one year we had school fish, and they were small. I think they were all like 27 to 47 inches, I think, at the time.
Yeah, so for those listening, it's like 30 pounds to like 75 pounds, basically.
Yeah. And there was millions of them, millions of them, and nobody even knew what to do.
2001, I think. Because I remember, like, you brought me like 50 bars one time, and I was like, and you're like, rebuild them this way.
Yeah.
And I believe they were all floss main lines to the bar, and some of them were wire. And you used to put like all sorts of different things in the squids, which was really cool to see.
Yeah.
You know, which that doesn't really happen anymore. No one really does that.
Yeah. It's so sick. I love hearing that.
But that fishing, that really changed everything, because now people could go tuna fishing and bring meat home.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think it was a great asset to the charter industry. And the sport guys that wanted to eat tuna fish. Okay?
Yeah.
And it doesn't get any better than the sushi that you catch there.
Exactly.
You know? And fresh, just caught tuna. God.
It's tough to beat.
Yeah. And so, the charters blew up, and everybody wanted to catch tuna at the time. And we watched these fish grow every year, because I was on the for 6 years I was on the Highly Migratory Species Advisory Panel in Washington, and that we would talk about this every year, and they were talking about the growing cohorts, I think they called it, and so every year you'd watch these fish go, you know, from 27 to 47. Next year they're 47 to 60 inches. And then for 7 years, we watched them grow until eventually they were giants.
Yep.
You know, but then there were still, we didn't have even today, we didn't have the numbers that we did back then. You know, there were times when I talked to Ralph Pratt, and who was a great fisherman. Wish he was still around. He's alive, but he had some health problems.
Yeah.
And but Ralph was flying at the time, and a lot of times we'd be trolling on the bank, and I get a call from Ralph, and he said, Tom, just go shoot east for 6 miles, and there are millions of schoolies on the surface right now. You know, he was looking for giants.
Right.
Yeah.
But he'd give me this information, and I'd pack up and shoot out there, and it was phenomenal. I mean, there was, you know, miles of fish,
Sweet.
you know, out there.
Bird's eye view. That's one thing I still haven't got with the fishery yet. That thing is so cool to be able to see the behavior from above.
Yeah.
My dad was telling us a story that, like, it was like him, Mike, and Ralph was flying, and they were, you know, out east somewhere, and Ralph did the same thing, put him on fish, and actually watched like a group start to follow his spread and watched the bite from the air. He said it was one of the coolest things he's ever seen. He's seen a lot of tuna fish. To be able to, you know, hear that from a guy like that, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But that's awesome.
Wild.
Well, you got your family you were the leaders in that whole trolling situation, because the way you rigged your boat up, okay, you had, I don't know, 4 outriggers.
Yeah.
4 nobody had 4 outriggers other than you.
Yeah.
And so you had a bigger spread than anybody else, and
Yeah.
you mastered the whole thing. Between him having, you know, Greg having a son that made all the rigs, so he could kind of
Experiment with everything.
Yeah, he could say, you know, do this or do that, and you were fishing too, so you could get an idea what you had to do to change things to make more bites. But you guys were right on top of it. It was fantastic. You know, it's nice having friends that know what's going on here, and you know, and we worked. Our families worked together. I mean, I don't know how many times I'd get calls from you guys, you know, when you were running the boats and whatnot, and saying, Tom, come on over this way. There's fish all over the place. And so that was good.
No, we've definitely learned a lot from you, that's for sure. I mean, my dad fished with you forever. My uncle fished with you forever.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, Dad, how many years did Dad probably...
Dad was with Teddy and Tom and fished with Jeff and Debbie, and he was in that whole Green Harbor charter mix for a while before we had, you know, got our first... like actual charter boat,
right?
You know.
Then Ed ran the boat. So
he was my captain. Yeah. He was great. Great captain. He, you know, he eventually had to get a regular, you know, a real job and with benefits and all that. You know, and but he did a super job at it. You know, and. No, he was good, and I know he was related to you guys at the time, and which was good. And no,
it's cool how the charter guys, like, especially the veteran guys, been doing it a while. It's still like everyone does their own thing because it's still a competitive fishery, but everyone still works together and appreciates the knowledge shared, which is cool.
Yeah,
you know, I like that.
Where do you see the tuna? I mean, you've seen it now from basically not the ground up, but pretty close to the ground up. Where do you see the tuna fishery going in the next like 20 years? Do you see it? Do you not have any idea, or do you think the fish are gonna keep getting more plentiful and there's just gonna be more boats, or do you see luckily, a drastic change?
Yeah, luckily we have ICAT, you know, regulating the fishery, and you know. I think a big benefit here. I have to thank Rich Rouet, who was the executive director of First East Coast Tuna Association, and then the Atlantic Bluefin Tuna Association, and you know, we finally got the Mediterranean countries to start doing some conservation over there, because I mean it was sickening. They had Rich was over there one year on an ICAP meeting, and he took a walk, stroll down the street. I think it was Morocco, I'm not sure, and or Spain. I'm not one of those places in the Mediterranean. And walking down the street, and they had bluefin tuna that were like 12 inches long for sale, and so he got a couple of these things, and he bought a bag of them and brought them to the meeting and said, how can we ever get this population growing when you guys are selling these fish at 12 inches long? We've in the United States, we can't keep a fish under 27 inches.
Yeah.
And finally, between that and all the pressure that was put on, when we almost had it designated as an endangered species, thank God, if they didn't, that would stop the whole sale of them. But finally, it got the Mediterranean companies to get in line and start doing some conservation. So that helped a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big reason. I mean, they've got way more tuna over there than we have. All right, probably 5 times as many bluefins in the Mediterranean than there is here. And so them doing more conservation is helping us because it's making the world population bigger.
Yeah.
And we're doing a lot of conservation here too. The conservation in the Mediterranean, not in the Mediterranean, in the Gulf of Mexico. In the Gulf of Mexico, that's where they all spawn. And, the fish that we're catching, most of them, with the exception of the ones coming from Europe. And you can't, when I was in the Highly Migratory Species Advisory Panel, we try to find ways like using hooks that broke after a certain amount of pressure for the longliners down there. So they had to use these weaker hooks so they wouldn't be killing these big bluefins that were spawning down there. That's where they spawn.
Yep.
And so, we've done a lot of things to conserve the fish. And I think that's why you're seeing the populations growing. I just wish they'd give us a bigger quota. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which would help us,
It would definitely spread out the harvest for sure.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be dealing with all the RFD stuff and early closures and all those sorts of the
things.
RFDs are tricky. Tricky with charters. We've all been navigating it. It's like, some charters aren't the happiest, on a release day, and other guys love the release thing. So it's like, I'm sure you've seen it.
Yeah, and I was one of the beginning proponents of the RFDs, and I think for those of you who don't know what that is, it's restricted fishing days, okay? And I think it's helped us a lot because what we're trying to do is to not flood the market with fish, because that's going to give everybody low prices, including the guys that are buying the fish.
Yep.
And spreading the quota out so that we've got fish for the fall when the prices might be higher, and the fish are fattier and they got more fat content then, better prices. But if we flood the market, supply and demand, we're going to get nothing, and crappy prices, and we don't want that. So, and people object to it a lot, and this is the way it works. Okay, we can only keep the fish, we can only sell them on Sunday, Monday, and Wednesday, Thursday. Okay, and the reason for that is, number one, you have to understand the market in Japan is closed on Friday and Saturday. Excuse me, Saturday and Sunday. The market's closed on Saturday and Sunday. So if you catch a fish on Friday and it gets to Japan, okay, it's going to sit there until Monday. And then if you catch a fish on Saturday, same thing. It goes there. It's got to wait till Monday. So now on Monday, they got a flood on the market, okay? And so you're going to get crap for your fish. You're going to get crap money for your fish.
Yep.
All right? And so that's a big reason why Friday and Saturday that you can't sell the fish.
Yeah.
At least it's to make the prices better and less fish on the market so we're not glutting it. And then, we got a day off on Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, you catch the fish. They get to the market in time to be sold before the weekend. And so it makes for better prices. I would actually be in favor of another day as a restricted fishing day because, if you saw what happened last year and
so many fish
were caught in Chatham, okay, it flooded the market. And, and you guys were out there the day. I caught a fish and the buyers wouldn't take any fish. Okay. Yeah. And here I got a charter that, a good charter that comes back every year. And, we book based on the fact that these are going to be days that we could sell the fish. And now there's such a flood on the market. Even the buyers don't want them. So what do you do? Number one, we got a fish and we kept it because we want to take care of our customer.
Yeah.
And we had to cut it up and they took the meat home and all that instead of us selling it and making out. They make out and we make out. That's a win-win for both of us,
Right.
And I give them a portion of my.
Same with us.
Same with us. Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of people that don't now, actually.
Yeah.
No, there is.
Yeah.
Most of them don't. I think most of the guys don't give them anything,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I think the restricted fishing days have been a benefit to all of us. And you have some people that don't mind. They want to just catching a giant bluefin on their bucket list. Mm-hmm. So they want to catch one, and they don't really care if you kill it.
Yeah.
They want to be able to say, yeah, I caught a huge fish.
Yeah.
And so if you can get the fish on a non-sell day, if you get the fish up close to the boat, all right, you get them up close, take a picture of them in the water, and they're in awe just looking at the fish in the water.
Totally.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And getting some pictures of it. And to a lot of the charters, they're happy as hell. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure you guys know, if anybody knows, you got a lot more tuna charters than anybody, that a lot of the people are plenty satisfied with just doing that.
It's experience driven. We go on forever about the cod fish and ground fishing and meat fishing, but I know it's all controversial, but it's the experience now. People want the experience of catching that big fish.
Not necessarily bringing them home.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. The RFDs, from a fishing perspective, and again, I know it's controversial. There's guys on both sides of the fence with this whole thing, but generally there's less pressure those days.
Yeah.
It's easier to get a bite those days.
Right.
It just provides kind of a healthier experience and healthier fishing experience for the charter fishing,
Yeah.
You got closures on the weekend. You don't have as many, weekend boats out there because it's closed. So it still kind of spreads everybody out a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's definitely been challenging, but
it's a double-edged sword for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's more beneficial than it is.
Yep. And we're starting to see, we were fortunate enough to kind of, Canada kind of had this whole catch and release and, smaller quota and really only able to harvest one or two or a handful of animals a year. So we were able to learn a lot from those guys from a release perspective. So now we're starting, and we have been for years, implementing that into what we're doing. And you're starting to see the charter guys kind of adapt that and actually, even the recreational guys adapt those methods to release these fish healthy, put heavy pressure on them, get them up quick.
Yeah.
Which, in my opinion, makes for a way more fun battle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You're putting like 70 pounds of drag on these things away and staying on top of them hard. It's like, it's way more fun than being on pins and needles, like hoping to get a dart shot on this fish.
Yeah.
And then what you come to learn is like, we should be doing this on every single one of them.
yeah.
You know, it's like
Yeah.
you fight them hard, and you know you're gonna get them up quick. You're gonna get those opportunities that you want to harvest that animal quick.
Yeah.
You know, the more that you do that.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys have learned a lot about what size leader I should use, because you know, if you're not going to sell the fish, now you can test. You can try
Yep.
lighter lines, okay, smaller hooks and whatnot, and seeing, you know, is this going to work?
Yeah.
You know, can I go that light and not break off most of my fish?
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Seems like for sure 150 is like the magic number, I think.
agree.
I do too.
You know.
And circle
Yeah.
hooks.
And circle hooks.
150 in circle hooks. We've learned a ton about circle hook fishing in the last, 10 years, but
Yeah.
I'm 100% convinced that that's one of the key ingredients.
Now, what do you use for a hook? Can I ask you that?
There.
These actually, it's a
9-0.
9.0 Charlie Brown. We use different sizes, but generally we fish that hook. It's an inline circle, so it's not offset. It's true inline to the shank.
Yeah.
We've got it. I mean, like, we've had so many opportunities.
That's
to
actually
test
one of
stuff.
our hooksman fish.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
But we've got it pretty much figured out how to get that thing in the latch almost every single time. Just from having these closure days and being able to put those reps in, you know, which, allows you to freaking land that many more,
Yeah.
really.
But we definitely are a believer in, which we go back and forth on the drag thing, but we're pretty much a believer in like a light drag right off the bat for the bite. And
Yeah.
then, as he's running, put it up.
Being in control of the hook set is
Right.
the most important thing.
Yeah.
Instead of just letting, like, there's different, ends of the spectrum with that. Like, you can have your rod swung out and have slightly heavier drag and be in control of the hook set and have enough drop back for that line to get in the hinge and that hook to place correctly. But if you're in tune with all of that and are able to control that hook set as to where it's not flying into the hinge until there's pressure on the line in the hinge,
Yeah.
you're going to get them almost every single freaking time perfectly.
Yeah.
A lot of that we learned in Canada.
Yeah.
Like visually seeing them eat. They have to use circle hooks up there. So you're visually seeing them eat the bait and how that line angle takes off the rod, and then knowing how fast and how much pressure to put on initially. It's helped us a lot for sure.
Yeah. And I think for those that are listening that may not want to have to adjust the drag, just fish an offset circle hook.
Yeah.
You
Heavier
know,
drag,
offset circle hook, roughly the same size, and you could, 20 to 40 pounds right off the bite.
Yep.
I know a lot of guys fishing offset circles are just fishing 40 pounds just right on the bite, and hooking and landing, doing very well.
Yeah. It all comes down to your crew at the end of the day. I mean, we're fortunate enough we run 2 mates a lot of the times on the big boat. So there's like always eyes on the rod. If you're light on crew or you have new crew members every single trip, you kind of have to tweak that method to more what Taylor is saying. But the way we fish, it's like there's really never a time throughout the day where someone is not eyes on the spread the whole time, which is huge.
What we've realized too is like the tunas don't generally let go of the bait.
No.
Like I think people get nervous if I don't put pressure on them quick enough, they're gonna like spit it. But like they're not a bass unless they're down there just continually eating, which usually they're streaking up, eating a bait, and then going back down and then looking for more bait. So you have a good amount of time. But it's amazing how long you can actually let them like not play with it, but take some line on fairly light drag. And wait for the right opportunity of them swimming away in some capacity. If line's coming off the reel, you can go up on the drag.
Yeah.
If line's not coming off the reel, then you're reeling at whatever drag pressure you're at. And then once line starts coming off, then we're going up. So like we're realistically starting at like probably 10, 12 pounds. And then as it's, if the fish eats and comes right at us, we're reeling at that 10, 12 pounds. It kind of feels awkward. And then once he starts taking line, we're going up. And I think it goes back to like what type of hook and type of crew you got.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use the offset Super Moo 2.
Yeah.
Yep.
7/0. I've been using it for a long time.
Yep.
But I think I'm going to try this
Yeah.
hook and see
Yep.
if it works any better. And yeah, I mean, one of the things I always thought was that, guys that are pulling their hook, I wonder sometimes if it's that they didn't put enough pressure on it because, for them to spit the hook, the hook wasn't in good enough.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? If the hook is in and it's beyond the barb, you should never lose a fish then. Once it's
Yeah.
in the hinge and
Right.
Yeah. Once it gets a complete pass through that bar,
Yeah.
it's very, very rare that you
I
should
mean,
lose one.
I'm sure you've done the same thing. You get the fish in the boat and you can't get the goddamn hook out.
You cut
right?
latch out with a saw.
Yeah,
Yeah, you are.
I mean, it's unbelievable. You can't get it out.
Yeah.
You're saying,
How did it get
never
in?
lost this fish.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
And the nice thing is that the mono the fluoro is outside the mouth, outside the teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and unless you just lock the reel up, you're not going to.
No.
If everything's in line, I mean, number one, tuna you can't have any fuck ups on the setting up your line. No. It's got to be every crimp, everything has to be perfect, or it's going to break at the weakest spot.
Totally.
Right?
And they'll find every spot.
Yeah, they'll find it. They'll find where your weak spot is if you didn't do it right.
Yeah.
So it's so important that every crimp is done well, and that's how you're going to catch the fish.
The pressure. So, talking about mouse traps and then now talking about fishing 150 fluorocarbon, I think the key recipe to keeping that line out of the mouth, which is to a lot of people that don't get to do it as much as we all get to do it, is that drag. More not 100
Right, you
pounds
will
of
break
drag,
them off.
but heavy drag is going to get them to submit to whatever side they're hooked on, which is going to keep the line on that side of their body. If you're giving them light drag and you're allowing them to change direction too much,
Rolling and all that.
it's going to be a 4-hour fight and it's going to be a 50-foot away heartbreak almost every single time.
Yeah.
That drag is going to lay them on their side. It's going to get them tired. It's going to keep that line out of their mouth.
Yeah.
So it's really to your advantage to get used to
Right.
fishing that heavy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that being said, we always talk about this, that middle range size fish, that 85
It's
to
the
90
only
incher,
anomaly.
and down is the hard part with that 40 pounds of drag, because now you're changing their head position and you can almost chafe or lose them easier.
Yeah, it's too much drag. It's pulling their body weight around too
Right.
much.
So you almost need now you're down to that 25, 30 range. You got to let them tire out a little bit, but also enough pressure to keep them on their side. I feel like we chafe off those 90 inches more than we do the real big ones.
Agreed. Agreed.
Well, you got
do
to
you
remember. You got to remember one thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And a lot of people, you'd say, "Hey, I got a 1,000-pound fish." All right, or whatever. I'm just giving you this as a reference. 1,000-pound fish comes in sometimes easier than a 500-pound fish, because now you're looking at an old man like me who can't fight back as hard, right?
Yeah.
Instead of a teenager like you guys. Okay, not a teenager, but
Middle-aged superhero.
middle-aged guy that's strong. Okay, a 500-pounder is going to give you a much harder fight than a 1,000-pounder.
Yeah.
So sometimes the big guys aren't the big battles. The big battles are those 400 or 500-pounders.
Yeah.
That are strong and will give you a really hard time.
Totally.
What's the longest fight you've ever had?
8.5 hours.
Oh my.
8.5.
Did you catch them?
Yes, we got them. Yeah, and I've lost fish at 7.5 hours. Okay, and heartbreak. But you're fishing them into the dark, and I don't have the big lights like .com and some of the other guys do. I don't know if you have the big.
Not
Some, but not
like that.
Not fighting worthy.
I mean, they're like daylight compared to doing this, and so it's hard. Once you get into the dark, you can't see the leaders as good. You can't see the fish. Harder to harpoon them.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's nothing you can do. The 8.5 our fish, I mean, the rod tip was touching the water, for crying out loud. We had it cranked right down.
Yeah.
It was just a bitch of a fish. And it actually took us 13 miles from where we hooked it before we finally caught it.
Do you remember where you hooked it?
Where it was on the backside. It was on
was it?
Peaked Hill.
Yeah.
On a bluefish.
Yeah.
Okay. And those fish are strong, and with the currents there and all. And I mean, unfortunately, I had it. It went towards Race Point at first, and then turned around and went right through the whole fleet. Okay, it was a pain in the ass fish, I'll tell you. And my mate at the time, okay, Courtney, and she did a fantastic job. I mean, I don't know if you ever met Courtney.
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah, she was a fabulous mate. And I mean, I was losing my mind after like 6 hours of fighting. She'd say, go forward, and I'd put it in reverse. And, no.
Yeah.
She saved our ass a million times, but she did a great job at it. And we finally got that fish,
Yeah.
But it was a battle. But I don't know, what was the longest for you guys?
I had one with Weber that we had a harpoon in it in like 45 minutes. Like ate the down rod, probably gut hooked or something.
Yeah.
Came up blackback, like swimming away, and we just backed up on it and stuck it. It went down and broke us off on the rod.
Yeah.
And then we had it on the dart line for like 4 hours, 8 miles, just an absolute shit show, dragging 3 polyballs.
Yeah.
The whole deal. We've had, I would say, like 4 hours, 5 hours, in there.
Many in the 2 to 3 hour range that generally don't end well.
I've
heard a couple that did end well.
Yeah. I've heard 12-hour stories.
Yeah. What's the longest you've heard of a fight? Like, what's the longest fight that you've heard of someone having?
I know Sashmi one year had one, and I know it went all night. He was still fighting it in the morning. I don't know. I'd have to say over 12 hours. I think, from my recollection is right.
Yeah. Do you know if he caught it?
Huh?
Do you know if he caught it?
I'm not sure. I can't remember, to be honest with you.
Well,
I can't remember. That's the longest I've ever heard of,
Yeah.
But let me tell you a little story this year. So, it was supposed to blow. It was a Wednesday, and it was supposed to blow. Okay. And so I canceled my charter the night before because I knew they were coming a long way. And so I says, shit. So maybe, all right, I talked to the mates. So we don't have a charter. And I said, let's go bass fishing, okay? Because it's a Sol day, commercial bass fishing. So we went over to, off Plymouth. And I went over there and caught a bunch of pogies, okay, to bass fish, and caught a couple bass. And Charlie came over to me, okay, and says, Tom, I just saw 4 giants swim by. We're in 50 feet of water, not even that, maybe 30. All right. He said, I just saw 4 giants go by me in the water. All right. He says, screw this bass fishing. I'm going to tuna fish. So I said, I'm going to do the same thing. And Weber did the same thing. All right. So here it is. We're in 50 feet of water, got our tuna rods out, and we're putting pogies back there, okay, on balloons.
Yeah.
And Charlie put a kite up, okay. And so, we're drifting, and luckily the drift was out. So we started right where the striped bass fleet was, and we're trolling out. And maybe a half hour later, or maybe a little longer than that, I don't know, an hour later, Charlie calls and says, I'm tight. Okay, we're on a fish. It's tuna, all right? Yep. And so he fought the fish and caught it. And okay, see you later. We're heading in. And so all I had was the 2 boys, Anthony and Paul. And
how old are they? Just so everybody knows.
Yeah, they're
in like their teen.
Anthony's 18 now, and Paul will be 18 in July. Okay,
gotcha.
So they're 17 years old. All right, This is past summer. So we're drifting along, and I get balloons out there, and it's funny. So my grandson, I'm down below kind of resting, and Anthony's out in the cockpit, and Paul's sitting in the captain's chair, all right, eating a sandwich. And all of a sudden, I see the sandwich fly down to me, and Paul running out the door saying, we're on, okay? So we hook up on a fish, all right? Great, we're on. So we fought the fish for an hour and a half, all right? Finally got it up to the boat. It was still kind of green, okay? It was very green. And got it up to the boat, and Anthony nailed the fish with the harpoon. The fish broke the fishing line, okay? And so we had to throw the ball in, okay? We had like 300 feet of rope there. Threw the ball in. So now we're chasing a ball, all right? So every half hour or so, we'd get up to the ball and be able to grab it and start bringing line in, but all of a sudden the fish would go crazy and we'd have to let the ball go again. So this was like three or four times we're doing this thing. So we got another hour and a half since we hooked the fish. So we're like, this is 3 hours later. And so we did that like 3 times, and we didn't know what to do. So Mike Miller calls me and says, Tom, he's used to going with, harpooning.
Yeah.
Okay. And he says, Tom, what you got to do is you got to, are you sure you got him good with the harpoon? I says, Anthony said he hit him good. So he says, you got to choke up on, go at least halfway to the fish and put a bigger ball on there. Okay. So we used the ball we pull our anchor with.
Yeah.
Okay. He says, put a swordfish clip on it, just clip it on there. And that's what we did. We ran up and clipped it on there. Okay. And then the fish pulled so hard we had to let go of both balls eventually. So here we're chasing these 2 balls. They're going underwater, okay? What does that remind you of?
Jaws.
Yeah.
So that's what I named the spot, Jaws, okay? So we're chasing the balls, and sure enough, they stopped moving, and then we grabbed the balls, brought it up, and we brought up a dead fish.
That is sick.
So
Epic.
this is this past year.
That's what it's all about right there.
Yeah.
With your grandkids.
Huh? With the grandkids, yeah.
Yeah.
Just you and the 2
with Paul and Anthony, yeah. They're outstanding. They do a fantastic
They're super
job.
into it.
Yeah.
They're super into it.
That
Love
is a
it.
badass story.
It is. Yeah. A Jaws fish with the grandkids. I don't think it gets any better than that.
Yeah.
That's sweet. What what was I going to ask you? I had one good question on the tip of my tongue. You've been doing this for a long time. So I would imagine you've seen some scary shit at different moments. What's some of the scariest, or like maybe the scariest moment you've had out there, with a charter, rough seas, safety stuff? Well,
the roughest I've ever seen, once again, I used to live in Connecticut, okay? And this wasn't with a charter or anything like that. I used to keep my boat in Portland, Connecticut, and then for the winter, okay, and then bring it down the Connecticut River and go as far as Point Judith, spend the night in Point Judith, and then bring it to Green Harbor from there. So I left. So here I'm in Point Judith, and the forecast for the next day is light and variable. Okay, and okay, so we're going to head to Green Harbor. So I left Green Harbor, and it's getting rougher and rougher as I'm going. Okay, and this is just myself and another guy. We didn't have a charter or anything like that, and so we got as far as the I think they call it the light ship off of, in Buzzards Bay, the Buzzards Bay, like tower there.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was blowing like hell. What I recall is it was 70 knot winds. Okay. Like gale winds. Okay.
Weathermen doing the job.
Weathermen doing their job. So I get there, and it was like treacherous, okay? And I thought, because the wind was coming from the northeast, I thought the Cape would protect us, but it didn't. I mean, it was crazy. And I mean, at the time, I had the Bruno, and I just had a canvas top put on the fly bridge. Okay. So thank God I did that, or I would have got blown off the fly bridge. All right. It was horrible. So it was just myself and another guy, and he was in the Navy for 4 years and said he was in some big seas, but never anything like this. And I mean, we were going up on these waves that were like 10-foot, 10-foot waves. And you get all the way up on the top, and then everything would disappear underneath you, and bam! And it was kind of the acid test for the boat at the time. And so what normally takes an hour from that lightship to the entrance of the canal is normally like an hour away. Okay, it took us, I don't know, 6-7 hours because we're making no time at all. And I mean, it was the most horrible ride. I mean, everything in the boat was down on the floor, nothing. And finally made it in there. So it's funny because my wife at the time went to the marina, was up in the bar waiting for me to show up. And everybody said, where's Tom? Oh, he's on his way from Point Judith. And they said, well, you better check his insurance policy. Because I don't think he's going to be here. It's blowing like hell out there. I mean, it's blowing like 60, 70 knots. Check your insurance policy because you may have to collect on it.
Oh, my God.
So
Holy
I finally
shit.
got there. This is before cell phones and anything else like that. So I had to call somebody I knew there to go and tell her that I'm alive, and she probably said, damn it.
That's awesome.
So anyhow, but I just left the boat in Sandwich and I got somebody to give me a ride back.
So that one freaked you out. That one scared you.
That was the scariest, I'd have to say, time that I've from weather and whatnot. I mean, we've all had accidents where, a propeller broke and you're taking on water and stuff like that. But nothing scared me as much as that did. I mean, it was the worst seas I've ever been in, and thank God the boat made it.
When you feel like when too many variables are out of your control,
Right.
that is when it's the most terrifying for sure.
Yeah.
Any good charter customer stories? Funny charter customer stories? Any that are memorable, more memorable than others?
People falling overboard.
Too drunk.
Well, yeah, I had one guy fall over. That's the only guy I've ever had fall over. And he was pushed over by Jack Daniels. It was a friend of mine, and normally hard liquor. I don't let people drink hard liquor on the boat.
They sneak it though.
Yeah, but he was a good friend, and he was drinking Jack Daniels, and the next thing I know, we hit a wave, and he's in the water, and oh my God, that's a scary situation.
It is.
When one of your customers, and I know I talked to your father, who
Similar. It
went
wasn't
for a
went
swim
first.
one time.
Yeah.
That to me would be really scary. Yeah. I don't know if you remember the time years ago. I had my wife's nephew staying with us, and we were tuna fishing, and he was working for Andy Glenn. Now they went way east, like 60 miles out. There was fish being caught out there, so they were out 60 miles off of Green Harbor. Okay, and they fished several nights out there. They stayed out there several nights. There was a lot of guys out there. I didn't go out there, but they were out there. So, after, you get pretty tired when you do these overnight deals and whatnot. You get pretty tired. So, Andy's coming in. It was just him and his mate, and he said to the mate, "Can you take over for a little bit? I got to close my eyes here." So Andy went to sleep. Okay, as the boat was coming in, and they were on autopilot. All right, and so finally he wakes up from sleeping and goes upstairs and, "Ian, where are you?" He doesn't see him. Calling him, goes outside, looks up in the tower, nobody's there. Holy shit. So apparently what happened was he was sitting on the captain's chair, and it was just a loose chair. It wasn't secured real good, and had his feet up, and he was just relaxing it. I guess they got hit with a wave, not too big, and he went over the side, okay? And the chair went over with him, all right?
Wow.
Okay? Now, this is coming back from like 50, 60 miles out, all right? So Andy gets up, and all of a sudden he's looking at it, and he finally realizes, holy shit, he's not here. He's overboard, Calls the Coast Guard, calls us out there fishing, and so everybody's looking for Ian, all right? And the Coast Guard had planes out there and helicopters and whatnot, and luckily they found him, okay? He had fallen overboard on the way in, like halfway in. Fuck. And the boat was on autopilot. I mean, if Andy kept sleeping, it would be on the beach somewhere before you know it, or hit another boat or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty scary incident. But thank God, Coast Guard went out there with a helicopter, picked him up. And
was he just treading water, or was the chair floating? Or
luckily the chair went over, and it had a white cushion on it that he held on to that floated. Okay, I mean, and that helped find him for the helicopter to find him, and so he was. The first thing he said to the Coast Guard, "Andy's going to kill me because I ruined his chair," But no, everybody was happy at that point. They went straight to the hospital in the helicopter, and he turned out to be okay. But
it could happen in the blink of an eye.
I mean, I know, and I guess your father was coming off the ladder or whatever.
Same
down.
situation.
Yeah,
almost the exact
and hit a wave,
story.
and he went into water, and thank God the mate or somebody saw him.
Yeah, it was actually Corwin. Jeff Corwin was on the boat. They were similar. They were east of the bank, and they were like just crossing the southern edge, coming home to Scituate in like November. Similar situation. Thankfully, done cold water training and knew how to use his, what he was wearing to create flotation and all that sort of thing. But I think a lot of people that haven't been doing it, I mean, Taylor and I haven't been doing it, obviously, as long as you or our father, Ralph and Delphs, and it can happen like that. It is just so important to have situational awareness out there,
We came in one day in March. That's back when we were cod fishing in March, and it was fantastic fishing all. I'd start March 1st, which was crazy. But we were coming in, and I had two boats. I had the Big Fish 2, and at the time I had a wooden boat, 35-foot Ronald Rich. It was a wooden boat, but it did great for me. And I had Scotty Led running that boat. I don't know if you know him. He's a lobster guy out of Green Harbor. And then, so we're coming in March, and we get to about the H buoy, where the H buoy used to be. Mm-hmm. And so Scotty calls over and says, "Hey, what's that? What the hell is that underwater up ahead? I mean, almost looks like a life jacket." And all of a sudden we got a little closer, and holy shit, it's somebody in the water. And we ran over to him, okay, and we finally pulled them into the boat. It was two people holding on to the bow of a boat that was sinking, okay?
Holy shit.
And just as we got him, the boat went down, and we brought him into the boat, into Scotty's boat, and shot him into shore and call the Coast Guard and
So
whatnot,
lucky.
you know?
Holy shit.
And I mean, this is in March. Now, this guy had bought the boat, okay, brand new, never went out with it before, decided he's going to try it, went out there, and he thought he was going to do a little cod fishing, and he threw the anchor over and hooked it to the stern of the boat.
Oh my God. Sunk himself.
Yeah. And you know, the boat obviously was, you know, the waves just went over the transom, filled the boat up with the water, and next thing you know, they're in the water.
Jesus
And
Christ.
he didn't even have insurance on the boat or anything at that point, but lost the boat. But he's lucky to be alive.
No shit.
Holy Christ. In March?
Talk about fate there. You running home and just
Jesus.
barely seeing them. That's crazy.
On a lighter note, I wish we could still fish in March for cod.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of cod out there. I mean, it's sick that
That's what
they're
I'm hearing.
not. It's sick that they're not letting us fish because, you know, especially this year, I've seen it more than ever. No matter where we stop, and you know, normally we can avoid the cod and get into haddock where there's not a lot of cod to catch. This year we haven't been able to do it. I mean, there's been so many cod, and you know, it's disappointing for our customers because here they're catching these, you know, 10, 15, 20-pound cod, and they want to keep them. And they're saying, why can't we keep them? And I'm saying, the government says there's no cod around. This is your imagination. This is not a real fish.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it really just gets them mad that they're not able to keep the fish.
Even one fish.
Yeah. Well, you know, it should be a couple of fish. I mean, come on. You know, I mean...
It's Cape Cod, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
It really is.
To me, you know, I mean, it wasn't us that ruined the fishing for cod. To me, it was National Marine Fisheries. It was perhaps the council, okay? What happened was Jane Lubchenco became head of NOAA, all right? Which, in NOAA has control of the National Marine Fisheries Service. And so just Jane Lubchenco, who was the head of it, had this big vision of solving the codfish problems. And before that, we had what they call days at sea, where there was a separation between offshore and inshore. So if you went to George's Bank and you were a commercial fisherman, you could catch, well, let me go back a step. If you were fishing inshore, like Stellwagen Bank, you could keep 800 pounds of fish. If you went and fished George's Bank, way out, 160 miles out, you can catch 2,000 pounds of fish. So that kind of separated everybody. The big boats can catch 2.5 times what they could catch inshore, and that kind of forced them to go offshore because they can catch 2,000 pounds a day. And they had the boats that were big enough, 125-foot, you know, dragger, could go out there, and they didn't have to worry about weather as much as the smaller boats and whatnot, so they can handle that kind of weather out there, you know? And so Jane Lubchenco came and said, you know, okay, we're going to change the rules and allow these guys no quota, daily quota. They can catch as much as they want until they get their annual quota. In other words, what they historically caught in the past.
Wow.
Okay? You catch as much as you want any day until you get your quota, then you're all done. Okay? And you can fish anywhere. So, where are you going to go? Are you going to go 160 miles out and fish George's and take your life in danger possibly?
Right.
Or fish 20 miles out on Stellwagen Bank and you can catch all you want? And it was like going to a sanctuary because nobody's commercially fished it like that before. No, these huge boats. it was like going into a hatchery, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
And so, and with the fishery was at the point where they were almost ready. I mean, that's when we had a 10 fish limit. And, and I was on the recreational advisory panel, and the management was talking about, we're getting to the point where the population's getting so good, we're going to loosen up on the regulations, and they might go to 15 or more fish, per person. And all of a sudden, we're seeing these huge draggers on the bank. And before that, we had no problem catching our limit. Okay, we'd go out and catch our limit every day for the most part. All nice fish, 15, 20-pound cod.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden, we're having a hard time catching any cod, and it's because of the draggers. So it took a while before because the council was all, made up of guys that were, these big-time fishermen, these big-time commercial fishermen. And we had a hard time before we could finally get things to change and get them the hell off. And that was the time when we had the Codfather fishing. All these he brought 22 boats from New Bedford up, and they were cheating under quotas and whatnot, saying they were pollock instead of cod. And that's the whole reason why we're not fishing for them now. It's because they changed the rules and allowed these guys to come on with these monster boats and clean us out.
It's crazy.
10 years ago. So to me, they're the ones to blame, and why they're penalizing us. We're not the ones that went out there and hammered the fish. We were on a 10 fish limit at the time.
What do you think's going on with the haddock? I mean, you do more ground. You're still like top tier groundfish charter boat around. What's your theory on what we're seeing and everything?
I mean, fish move. Okay, they're not always in the same spot, and the unfortunate thing with, they wanted to cut us down to 10 fish this year. I was able to get it up to, on the recreational advisory panel, was able to get the limit up to 20 fish last year. Okay, they didn't give it to us until August, blaming COVID slowed them down, so they couldn't give it to us in May. So we didn't really get a chance to fish it at all last year. So now they're saying, our meeting in January, when we met in January, they wanted to reduce the limit to 10 fish. And, nobody's going to charter us for 10 fish.
Yeah.
Okay? Nobody is. I mean, it's bad enough.
One Ziploc worth of meat.
Yes.
Yeah, instead of being able to catch cod and all that, now we're all we got left. What do we have left? Haddock, redfish,
Pollock,
husk.
and it's hard finding the big pollock anymore.
Yeah.
So it's basically haddock, redfish, and small pollock.
Yeah.
And so 10 fish is gonna destroy the whole charter business in our area, and there's not many of us left.
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna take the few guys. I mean, there used to be 20 charter boats in Marshfield. Now there's like 2 of us, my son and I.
Yeah.
And who do you have in your harbor that does it all the time? I mean, Rob Green.
And
groundfish wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Pretty much just Rob.
Pretty
Just
much
Rob, yeah.
I mean, there's like multiple guys, but the frequency, yeah, Rob and us,
yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Other
so
guys
there's
are targeting the stripers and the tuna.
Yeah. So there's not many of us left, and that would completely destroy us. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping, they haven't come out with the new rules, but I'm hoping that it's going to be, and we've talked, I'll tell you, Stellwagen Charter Boat Association, I'm really proud of that whole organization because, we've been able to talk to management and we're respected now from pretty much, from National Marine Fisheries in charge of the groundfish, and then also the highly migratory species division, respects what we have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we started pushing for separate rules for the charter fleet as opposed to the regular recreational fishermen. So right now, we were able to get the council, we were able to get the recreational advisory panel, the groundfish committee, and the council to agree on a 15 fish limit at 18 inches. We had to go up another inch to get it to come out to the same numbers as the
So that's what it is. That's what it is now.
17 inch and 10 fish. However, National Marine Fisheries was worried about the dead discard doing that. So hopefully we're able to talk them into separate rules for the charter, for hire guys, party boats and charter boats, and different rules for the general regular fishermen, recreational fishermen. So hopefully what they're going to come out with is for the recreational fishermen, it'll be 10 fish at 17 inches. And for the charter fleet, it'll be the charter and party boats. It'll be 15 fish, but an 18-inch size limit, okay? And, they haven't finalized it and come out with it, but that's what Stellwagen Charter Boat Association is pushing, and all the for-hire guys.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's smart.
because I don't think we could live with 10 fish. I think all our customers will...
They're not making their money back in food. That's the bottom line. Like they're not able to break even.
They're paying a lot to go fishing, and 10 fish is not enough.
Yeah. What else?
Has anybody pollocked fish this year?
Well, I haven't. I wish we had the fishery like we did years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. And where we were going out to the eastern edge there,
right,
and hammering those huge
so
fish.
much fun.
Has anybody tried it like in the last few years?
Well, I tried it last year and I didn't see him there. And I think what happened was National Marine allowed some of the commercial guys. This is just my opinion on these experimental rules, to allow some of the commercial guys to go out there and fish the Western Gulf of Maine closed area, where before they couldn't fish that area commercially.
Yeah.
So I think they let some of the guys in there, and I think they knew where those pollock were and hammered them, because they all of a sudden they just disappeared from that whole area.
Yeah.
And there's pollock there, but they're tiny.
Yeah.
Compared to the slobs that we were catching.
We had a couple after tuna trips last year. We got into some good ones, but it wasn't, consistent. You couldn't stay on them. You'd be sitting there and you'd be catching cod and redfish and a couple haddock, and then you'd get maybe 5 pollock, and then you're waiting 2 hours and you might get 5. But they were decent size. They were probably 8 to 15 pounders, 20 pounders. But not like it was. We could do a whole day just amazing pollock fishing, and they fight so well.
They're awesome.
You get 2 20-pounders on. It's like,
I think they're the most fun,
sick.
the most fun bottom fish we have.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, it is.
You can tell me how striped bass is a great sport fish, and I'm saying, you guys haven't caught pollock. That's right.
Yeah.
You catch a striped bass. They fight for the first 2 minutes. And then you're bringing in a log, right?
Right, yeah.
That's my feeling. Right
Yeah,
now.
right.
Yeah.
You hook pollock, and you hook 2 or 3 pollock. We used to fish with a jig and 2 teasers above it, and you get 3 30-pounders on there, he'll put a weightlifter to his knees.
Yeah, well,
okay?
yeah.
That rod is touching, the tip of that rod is touching the water. And I mean, these guys are this is what they dream about.
Yeah.
Okay? That kind of a fight. And even one pollock on there will beat any regular recreational
100%.
guy, right?
100%.
It's a good thing they don't fight like all the way to the surface. You know, like they get whatever halfway up probably and they start to kind of blow up a little bit. But those things right off the bat, I mean, if you catch a striped bass on the same gear, you could beat a 40-pound striper like that, and a 15-pound pollock is like equivalent, you know, and fight.
Yeah.
But so was it last year or the year before we saw you catch a big halibut? That was cool. It wasn't that big, but it was a keeper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you been getting like a lucky bite a year or like?
No, well, here's the deal with the halibut. Okay, we could be catching, and I say we, I mean all of us could be catching a lot more halibut. But the reason we're not is because we're bait fishing now. So we're using clams instead of jigs like we did years ago. Now going back years ago, I mean, we'd get 10, probably around 10 halibut a year, okay? But they were big fish. They were anywhere from the ones you saw where we caught.
What was that, like 60-something inches? Like that?
I can't remember right now. It was close to 100 pounds, not quite 100 pounds, but close to it. And I was jigging at the time. I was actually jigging and hooked it, and I knew it was a halibut. I was trying to get a halibut. Okay.
Interesting.
I was jigging while everybody else was bait fishing, and that was close in. That was right off the Situate.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so right away I handed the rod over to one of my customers, and he fought the fish the rest of the day.
He got worked too.
Oh yeah.
I've never seen a bottom fish around here.
I know.
Like all the way to the surface, all the way to the bottom, all the way to the surface.
That's sick.
How many? He probably took 20 runs.
Oh yeah,
at least. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they fought him for a while. And you
walking
guys
around the boat, we were taking pictures of you and stuff.
Yeah. I got you sent me the video. So that was great. But I could hear you talking, and when we got it, you're saying, "Holy shit, that is so rare." It was so rare. But years ago, we would catch them all the time, and I know they're there, and they're probably more there now, because in Maine they were able to hatchery produce a whole bunch of fish, and they started stocking them up there. And now it's a big fishery in Maine.
Yeah.
Okay, the halibut fishing, and some of those fish are moving down here.
Yeah.
So I'm sure if we were jigging now, we would see halibut all the time. I mean, they're still catching them. The guys that are gill netting, even off of Marshfield, they catch them all the time. Or the guys that are using tub trawls and whatnot, they're catching them even in there. I'm sure the guys off Situate are catching them. So they're there, and they're on Stellwagen, I'm sure. But nobody's jigging anymore because we can't keep the cod. You know? I got pails and pails of jigs. I can't wait till they open it up again. Or
do you think they ever will?
I don't know. I'm hoping they do, but I mean, with the population I'm seeing this year, I don't understand why they haven't at least allowed us. I mean, they're letting the guys south of 42. Okay, first they were unlimited, and then they went to 10 fish, and now it's 5 fish. And they did have a slot limit, I think 22 to 28 inch cod. And but they did away. The proposal for this year is that they're doing away with the slot limit, and I think they had to give up a month or something like that of the fishery. I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly how the proposal was, because it's not affecting us. But they're still able to catch 5 fish, and I think we should be able to catch 5 fish. And they're able to fish all year for the most part.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think they need to liberalize us. And there's actually talk of making one instead of being separated by the 42 line, of making all the inshore down in, all the way to Connecticut, Rhode Island, and all that coming back, making that all one area, and maybe that'll loosen it up so that we can catch more cod.
Yeah. Halibut tricks. Is it as simple as just jigging while you're bottom fishing, or is there anything else that you do to try to target them?
Yeah, I mean, because they're rare to catch, number one.
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't know. And you will catch, I mean, I was using a fairly small jig. It might have been a 8 or a 10 ounce jig at the time. And I was fishing for haddock too. I mean, I had, I think I was using mackerel strips at the time down there, and that would catch the haddock, because I was trying to hope the customers catch their limit. And but I was kind of targeting, if there were any halibut around, I knew that's the only way you were going to get them. One of the reasons is because halibut have teeth. They don't have big teeth like bluefish, but they do have teeth, just like a tuna.
Yeah.
Okay? And if you catch them on a bait rig, they're a strong, hard fish, just like a tuna, and chafing back and forth on those teeth, you're gonna break mono.
Yeah.
Okay? That's why you don't see a lot of them being caught on bait.
You wonder how many are quote unquote poor beagle sharks that people think they have.
Yeah,
exactly.
Bit up by a poor beagle, and it's a halibut eating their haddock, or whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, and so 90% of the halibut I've caught over the years have been on jigs, because once again, it's protected by it's all metal, and they bite it, and they don't normally swallow the whole jig. It's usually in their mouth, so the teeth can't affect it at all, and that's why we caught the fish.
Yeah.
But it wasn't uncommon to, especially with women and children reeling up a cod years ago, and they'd get it right up to the surface, and here's this monster doormat behind the and I was fishing the big fish too, so I'm up in the fly bridge, and I'm there. Holy shit! Look at the size of that fish. Yeah. You got a big halibut right there. Let it down a little bit, and get somebody big to grab that rod.
Yeah.
Sure enough, so we've hooked them that way too. You know?
That's crazy.
I mean, these they follow it right up from 200 feet of water.
No way.
Right up to the surface.
Our dad had one hit the kite on the corner.
Wow.
Yeah. Mackerel on the kite had a halibut come up, big white belly, brown back, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Surprised there aren't more eating tuna baits.
I know.
I mean, if they're on the bank, all these herring 20 feet off the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that'd be great. But once again, don't forget, they're rare. I mean, if I caught, and I had a lot of trips, if I caught 10 all year, that was a good year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the funny thing, in talking about that, years ago when we caught all these cod, and the fisheries changed so much. It was a dream years ago, because you not only caught these huge cod, you caught huge pollock, you caught monkfish. We've caught monkfish up to 50 pounds. We would catch huge wolffish.
Yeah.
I mean, your catch always had a big variety of all these good-eating groundfish.
Right.
And now you can't keep the wolffish anymore.
Can't keep the cod.
Yeah.
Can't keep the cod. Monkfish are very rare, very, very rare. Okay. And once again, we're not catching the halibut because we're not jigging. So, like I said, we're back down to haddock, pollock, and redfish. Yeah. What else is there? I mean, that's about it. And catching your limit of haddock is a lot of fish. It's a lot of, once again, in all fish, look at striped bass. It used to be unlimited, and now it's one fish per person and with a slot limit.
Yeah.
So pretty much all the fisheries, there's more conservation going on than there was before.
Yeah.
just trying to keep the population alive and sustainable.
Yeah.
You know.
If you had a week during like prime time bottom fishing time of year, so like, I don't know, late May, early June, I guess, around here.
Yeah.
He had a week with no charters and unlimited funds. Where would you want to bottom fish within like 40 miles from home? Where would you spend like your time? Would it be way out east, like the humps and just with jigs and trying to find weird stuff? Or would you be...
Yeah, I think if I was just, yeah, I would do that. Yeah, that's where I'd fish. I mean, because you're going to find a lot bigger stuff out there.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, it was nice. And once again, we need to go out and experiment. Okay?
That's the problem right now.
If you, and you guys get a lot of charters too. We need to go out and go back to where we caught those pollock before. Because, I mean, we caught haddock there good.
Yeah.
Okay? And the pollock were there. And the nice thing about that is, when you got a charter, is if you're anchored, put a line out, put a mackerel or a haddock or whatever out on a balloon, and you got a good chance of getting a nice poor beagle.
Yeah.
Almost, I'd say probably 50% of the time you're gonna hook one of those.
I would easy 50%. The amount of those things around now is insane.
It is insane.
You know?
Yeah, my son Kevin was showing some pictures of poor beagles and got contacted by University of Arizona, and they're the big poor beagle research area group, and they actually came on the Big Fish 3 and they went out and they caught a poor beagle for the research guys, and they tagged it, okay, and they tagged it, and I forgot he named it like Jack. I can't remember the name exactly, but he named it, and it got to be a very famous poor beagle because it went, I think all the way down to Florida or wherever and came back again, and so the guy that was ahead of this thing, the professor, and did a presentation for Stellwagen Charter Boat Association, and it was a virtual thing because it was during the COVID thing here I think a year ago or so, and it was funny, and they're talking about this shark, and I made a comment that was caught on the Big Fish 3.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, that the Jack or whatever the guy the name of the fish is, but it was one of their famous
That's cool.
catches. But he went with them. We went out last fall, and I don't know if you experienced this, but there was a ton of small poor beagles.
Tons
out
of
there.
them.
Yeah.
Tons of them.
40
okay?
inches, 30 inches.
We caught like 4 one day out there. Mm-hmm. So he called the research people, and they were coming in. They were flying in, and actually had one of the research girls come with us on a charter. But it turned out we didn't catch a poor beagle that day. We tried to catch those. We were doing the same thing, fishing the bank with deep lines.
Yep.
And we didn't hook any. But he went on a research trip with them down to somewhere off Chatham, and they caught like 6 of these poor beagles, and they wanted to catch one that was pregnant, and they did catch one and did.
Wow.
So, we're in probably the best area in the world for poor beagle sharks. There's only 2 major fisheries, and it's right here, Massachusetts, and in Portugal. Okay. Now,
I would have never guessed that.
Yeah, I was gonna say somewhere over there, but Portugal wasn't the country that came to mind.
Now, it's funny because when I was on the Highly Migratory Species Advisory Panel, and I think it was like one of my first meetings to go there as being part of the panel. Brought up a proposal to ban all recreational poor beagle shark catches in the United States. All right. And, you know, and at the time I said, I got up and said, you know, the catch for poor beagle sharks, number one, is for recreational fishermen, is just a drop in the bucket compared to the fish that are being caught. Because the major catch is, these are cold water sharks, is in Canada. I mean, Canada has a big fishery for poor beagle sharks. And so if you look at the numbers, because we had all the numbers there, you'll see that most of the catch is in Canada. And I said, number one, and this was a long time ago when Tom Bell was like the prime shark fisherman in the area, and he was catching them. I says, most people couldn't identify a poor beagle shark. They think they caught a mako, and that's back when you could catch makos, okay? Yeah. So I said, 90% of these fish are still going to be brought in because everybody thinks they're a mako, and we're just a little
sliver of it.
Sliver of the whole catch, you know? And so this was my first time making a proposal there, you know? And all the other guys in the panel, yeah, I think Tom's right. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I'm in agreement with Tom, and blah, blah, blah. They all kind of backed me up there at the time, and it was great, you know? Yeah. And sure enough, we beat this or bitch or whatever you want to call her, okay? No, we got some words I'm not going to say over the air about Sonia, because she's the one that killed the whole dogfish industry here and ruined our chumming and all and everything else. Even for striped bass, people used to chum striped bass years ago, and now they're going to get all dogfishing. And there's nothing worse to be on a groundfish trip and all of a sudden start catching dogfish instead of haddock and cod and all that.
It's horrible.
It's a nightmare. And they are I hate to even say this, we caught our first dogfish 2 days ago.
No way.
All right. I mean, we caught one.
We were catching them in December, a lot of them.
Yeah, wild tuna fish.
Oh, what a pain. They're such a pain, and the population never should have been allowed to get this big, okay? And, back when I was part of the recreational advisory panel, they came up with a study that showed dogfish eat 70% of the juvenile cod that's out there. No wonder we're not seeing any cod, major growth. You're letting the dogfish eat all the babies.
Yeah,
you know,
probably in the haddock now.
Yeah, exactly. They're eating the haddock, and terrible.
The sharks in general, like pre your big mako shark, it was like that was a very rare, catch. Right. And now, end of July, August into September, we do grand slams on shark species while we're tuna fishing. Threshers, poor beagles, makos, blue sharks, great whites, like the overall abundance of all of those species. I feel like we never saw threshers like we do now.
Not in our life.
Never.
No
I don't know about what you saw.
In the bay, Stone Ledge, off Scituate, on the bank.
I think there's an amazing recreational fishery for thresher sharks that no one's doing.
Yeah.
I think you could fish Stone Ledge with mackerel and chum, and you could catch 100%. A half a dozen thresher sharks if you really tried.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and they're big fish. They're big,
and they fight so awesome. I mean, they're they fight like a tuna, but they jump.
Yeah, they jump.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy? You'd be fishing there, and all of a sudden, this thing out of the water, even before your rod goes down, right? Boom! And they're 6 feet in the air, all right?
Yeah.
And, but what the hell was that?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the rod goes down and you're on.
Yeah.
But I mean, they are crazy jumpers.
They're so
It's crazy how sneaky they can be too. I was with my wife last year, commercial tuna day, just a fun trip, no charter. And I'm like, down rod, mid float, far float, and like I watch the far float like kind of go weird. I'm like, that's weird. And then all of a sudden the down rod's like whoosh, goes off. I'm like, oh, we're on, come tight. And then I look out at the far float and there's a tail on the far float. The fish had had already eaten the down and just had brought it to the surface. It hadn't popped the band and ate the far float. We had them on 2 rods.
Wow.
Yeah, they're
so fast. They're like a blue marlin shark.
Yeah. Very cool. I have one last question for you because, I mean, your knowledge and experience is insane. But for the younger generation of fishermen, I mean, your grandchildren, to our age, whatever, what advice would you have for anyone looking to charter fish, to kind of take the path that you took? Like, what are some of your words of advice? I would say.
Well, number one, I think it's with all the people that are into it now. In terms of making a living out of it, it's difficult.
Yeah,
it's difficult today. If you're looking to be a charter captain, don't learn from the experts. Go on charters and see what the guy's doing. I mean, I learned a lot of my techniques when I first started, even before I started chartering, by chartering the best guys I knew. And I mean, I tell my customers sometimes, they say, I mean, I've got guys that charter me that have 60-foot boats. They own them, but they don't know what to do. Yeah. And you want to do it, and come right up front and say, hey, I'm trying to learn how to do this. I'll gladly tell people how to fish on a charter. They're paying their way, right? They're paying their way. And you ask me questions, and I'll be glad to answer them, rather than wasting 10 years of fishing, guessing at what you should be doing. Charter somebody that's good, like you guys or whatever. You've been doing it a long time. You know it. You can tell somebody who's got a boat what to do, and instead of them wasting their time on trial and error and doing the wrong thing for 10 years and not catching fish. Pay somebody to teach you how to fish.
Yeah. Exponential experience. Like, even like this, even just, podcasts, like do everything you can. Chartering and being on the water is obviously the most important, but it doesn't just end there. It's like always be learning.
Yeah.
And that'll eventually, run a good business model, and you can make good work out of it. Yeah. But no, that's good advice. If people want to book a charter with you, how do they find you?
Well, I've got a website, bigfishcharters.com, or my phone number, 781-834-7504. You can just call that number, and if I'm not there, if I'm fishing or whatever, just leave your name, telephone number, and I'll be glad to get back to you. Huge Tuna at AOL.com.
How fitting.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Exactly.
That's perfect.
That's my email address,
Yeah.
Okay? And
you have social media too, right? Well, Instagram, I think.
I'll be honest with you, I'm a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kevin
I'm
does
not
some
even
stuff,
on
right?
Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay. Kevin does most of.
He does a good job too.
Yeah.
He's over the last couple of years. He's pushed out a ton of good stuff.
Yeah. I just don't have the time to sit there and spend time on a website. I should, but I don't. I just don't. And I know you guys do. It's a young generation expertise. If I get stuck on a project, I'll just go to my youngest grandchild, okay? And ask them, how do I solve this problem? And then,
Beep, beep, beep,
Grandpa,
beep,
this
beep.
is easy. Bing, 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 and it's done. Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, really. God, I can't believe it. They are so sharp in this whole.
It is. They're brought up with it from the time they start school now.
I know. No, when they're 3 and 4 years old, they're playing with an
phones
iPad.
and all
God,
that.
geez.
I know. It's crazy.
I know.
Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.
This has been an
Anytime.
awesome conversation. Always learn a lot from you. Appreciate all the time fishing with you. When I was younger, trolling, giant fishing, learned a lot from you. My dad's learned a lot from you guys, the whole Depersia family. So thank you very, very much. Appreciate it. You got anything else, or are we good?
Oh, that was awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. And I
do it again
appreciate
next
your
year
whole
for sure.
family. I
Thank
appreciate your whole family. And no, we've been good friends for years. I was trying to think last night of how long. And I even called, I called Kevin. I says, can you remember back when you were helping Taylor make those rigs? I know you went over one or two times to make rigs. How old were you at the time? And he came up, and I think it's like 15 years ago that happened. And I said, I think I was
20 now, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
20 years ago?
Yeah.
Wow.
How old's Kevin now?
27.
Yeah, he was like 8 or 9, like snipping squids.
Yeah.
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 That's cool.
Maybe 10. But I was already a couple of years into it by then.
No, it's a tight knit group, and everyone feeds off each other and learns from each other, and it's important. But no, again, we appreciate it, and we'll definitely do more of these. I'd love to do one with like Kevin, Jeff, and you, and get some banter going. I think.
Picking each other apart.
Exactly. But thanks again. So we're going to end this on our father's 3 words of fishing wisdom. Remember, you can't catch them if you don't have a hook in the water. Always trust your instincts. And the last one, you'll have to keep listening. Stay tight, everybody. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you very much for tuning in to the SeaBros Fishing Podcast. If you would like more information about today's guest, our episode, and show sponsors, or if you want to order hats and apparel, please visit our website at SeaBrosFishing.com. You can also stay up to date on all the latest SeaBros Fishing content and podcast episodes by following us on Instagram at SeaBros Fishing. Finally, to book a trip with us through our family-run charter fishing company, please visit massbayguides.com or see our latest updates and fishing reports by following Mass Bay Guides on Instagram and Facebook.